Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about survivorship bias. What is survivorship bias? This is what we are going to talk today. Recently I read an interesting piece in Nature about careers, and 3 female authors actually described what survivorship bias is, and to summarize, they are talking about asking for career advice to someone who is in science. Why not asking those who left? So my take on this article is my point of view. Interesting from the author's personal take is that, for example, one of them got the opportunity because of having drinks with a senior authority. The other had a chance to publish a book and later on can have a break during her PhD based on her savings. And the more you dig and think about that, serendipity actually has a biggest role here, because of course we are coming with different backgrounds and we have different circumstances, but scientific success actually depends much more of your being lucky than actually investing a lot of hard work and having grit and really being persistent and having good ideas in science. So asking for an advice, someone who survived in science, who is in senior position, has its own drawbacks. I will count here some of them. A major flaw in much scientific advice and academic advice is a kind of logical error on looking at the career of someone who stayed in science, who has certain senior position, and judging by his or her description of career path and translating to the decisions that you are going to make. So, for example, if you're in position to stay in science and there are only low-paid options for work, like, for example, someone who is working in linguistic area or somewhere else, people are leaving the area because they have to live from something, and they decide not to accept low-paid work. In the time when I was young and when I was starting my career, actually that was much more extreme back then, because in that time it was not usual that a PhD student or someone who is taking on his or her magisterium is paid. So basically I had to work sometimes at 3 or 4 different jobs in order to support myself and to pay for the scholarship. So I think nobody was thinking about that as an obstacle. So one of interesting things and completely rational behavior I faced back then is that my back then mentor was actually angry with me because I couldn't stay longer in the lab after 11 in the evening, because he couldn't grasp the fact that I have to catch the bus to go home and have at least 5 hours sleep because I'm working early in the morning. Then giving advice to a young person that it is maybe good to take a break. Taking break means that you're financially free, or that you have financial support, and those who survived without even thinking about it, for example, taking a couple of months to think what they want to do, maybe dealing with something completely else, those who are counting that you have free weekends, free holiday, they cannot grasp but that majority of us are working all the time. I can tell that during my magisterium I was working so much that I was happy when I was sleeping 5 hours a night, and everybody today is realizing that having so small amount of sleep seriously affect your well-being and your physical and mental health as well. So, for example, giving someone who doesn't have a pay to take a break is of no use. So I think for majority of people who are thinking what next step would be, is more useful to talk with people who are in similar situation or in people who actually left science, to find out, for example, why they left and to seek advice there. For example, you can also see what other options are, and some options are maybe not visible to you. Of course, it is not to say that those who are giving you that advice are giving it, with intention to do something wrong. They are simply not aware that other people don't have that luxury to rely on someone's family help or any help they actually have. So that might seem that if you look at somebody's career path, very often you find some drawbacks to be actually positive. When you're living out from you, they are privileged that they're not so visible. I was looking for other places to find motivation to say, because in long stretches of time I was actually doing something else for a living and still doing my research without pay, because I believe it was worth enough to invest my time into, and I wanted to publish about that because it is useful to other people. And there was, I think it was sometimes over 2012-13, I was watching a roundtable organized by Intelligence Squared, when organizers gathered all the receivers of Nobel Prize for that year, and they were all discussing about their career paths, about how they come to realize that this is really important finding and what they have to say about that. And I was actually surprised that majority of them were threatened to the extent that they had to leave the country. Some of them were denied granting access for research, and many of them actually find some other unconventional way how to proceed with research they found to be promising, contrary to the belief of their funders or their universities. For example, in one case, the then Nobel laureate actually knew that he had to persist another year, and he actually paid himself based on a prior patent which is in connection to something completely different. Another one who actually invented blue light was threatened because in mainland China he was perceived as someone who can really financially benefit from research, and state actually did want to have grasp over it. So he left for US and went on with research. The third person actually was discouraged from following the same path of research, which eventually turned out to be something worth Nobel Prize. And if you dig deeper, you can find actually a lot of stories like that, that if you have your scientific integrity, I'm now talking about people who are in more senior positions, you have to be honest to yourself and rely on your own judgment whether something is worth your year of life or not. This is of course not for very young people who are starting their career paths, but what I want to say here is that even in senior positions, sometimes you have to make hard decisions, and also accept responsibility, because I also was in place that I had to decide whether I'm going to accept any job because I have to pay my bills, or to find a job where I still will have enough time to finalize something which I think is promising, or even to start my own company. Of course, then you have other problems to face, but again, we are talking here about a series of decisions that somebody has to make during his or her career path. Also, to put all this in female perspective, I'm giving my personal advice here because I also have my struggles, of course. Everybody does. At one point, the advisor I mentioned earlier, who was expecting me to work all night with him in the lab, tried to, as a revenge for this my disobedience, to stop my whole PhD procedure. demanding that I repeat the experiment which I did a couple of years before, which he knew very well was not possible at all. And then I realized that I have to solve this problem, and I need to ask somebody for help. And of course, I didn't turn to another advisor, because it is highly unlikely that he's going to support student instead of colleague. But I went and knocked on the door of a female professor who is above the same range in the department. And actually, she saved me. She asked me a simple question: Milena, who needs this? And the obvious answer is, I need this. Hence, I have to resolve that. She actually advised me to take a proactive approach, face him, and ask him completely without an explanation that, knowing that he's so important and busy, would he mind that he step down as my counselor so I can pursue my PhD? Which never struck to me. It never dawned to me as a solution. So I just did that, and one proactive email actually resolved everything. Knowing that he was in the place when he was very revengeful and angry, although he's a decent guy, and he actually was comparing my path with his, and he is repeating all the time that he did his PhD 7 years. So maybe even unconsciously he wanted me to copy every step that he made, and voila, we have the solution in 2 days. Another important thing is that, as this last crisis actually emphasized, not everyone has access to good education, not everyone has access to good positions, and I think the public perception to that is slowly changing. But again, in the time when I was about to make some decisions, it was completely not an option, because I had to do what I was told to do, otherwise I would be out of the project. And I accepted to volunteer a lot. I actually volunteered 3 years in science when I was doing my magisterium, because I've been promised to have a position later. That of course never happened. And after that, when I was working my PhD studies, I volunteered for full 5 years. And if somebody today asked me to do voluntarily something, I really got attack, because volunteering for years and then proving again and again that you're expert in something that you're doing for such a long time is ridiculous. Because next time that you're thinking about whether to stay in science or leave, please think of someone you probably already know and discuss that in the context of private life versus scientific life, because without the balance, the pay would be, I'm sure, pretty high. Thank you for listening. Bye.